If you told me 10 years ago that I would be flying to Colombia to meet my birth mom and siblings, I would have said you were crazy. Because I didn't know that I was adopted until I was 19 years old. Now, people always ask, well, how could you not know? Sure, I noticed that I was different, but there were enough similarities between me and my parents, like my black hair, brown eyes, and freckles, that I didn't really question anything until others started to point things out. When I was in kindergarten, a little girl with blonde hair and blue eyes told me that I couldn't play with her and her friends because I was brown. That was one of the first times that I truly noticed that I looked different from not only the people in my school and community, but also my family. I tried to talk to my parents when I got home later that day, and my concerns were brushed aside. And they told me it didn't matter what the girl thought. I was Italian and Portuguese, like them. Everyone in my family was in on the secret. But it wasn't until I was shuffling through paperwork in my dad's office one day during winter break from college that I finally discovered the truth within a stack of old paperwork that said, Mr. and Mrs. Guida's adopted daughter, Melissa. Reality had smacked me in the face. I was Colombian, and my parents had hid it behind lies and racism. For the next few years, I went through a roller coaster of emotions and struggled tremendously with anger and grief for a me that I should have been. And now all I knew for sure was what the paperwork said. My mother, my birth mother, had had another child, and she was in a bad situation and couldn't take care of me. For a while, that information was enough. But as soon as I got older and began my own motherhood journey, so many unanswered questions kept bothering me.
Hi, Killian.
Hi, Killian.
Today is July 11th, 2017, so it's a palindrome.
I started therapy after my depression spiraled postpartum and finally started to work on myself. And one day, on the way to an appointment, I received an email from a woman named Sarah who said, I'm your half-sister. I was adopted by another family. Do you want to talk?
I'm literally bawling because I just checked my email right now. 23andMe. I found my half-sister. We were both adopted from Colombia and Bogota.
Finding out that I had sisters sparked a desire to want to know everything about my birth story. And about a year later, I began my search for my birth mom, for our birth mom, with a private investigator. And after providing her with my adoption paperwork, she found my mom in just 3 days. I kept it a secret from my adopted family for a few weeks because I simply did not want to hurt them. But after experiencing how toxic hiding lies like that can be, I had to tell them. I was terrified that they would be upset. After all, my father's health was slowly declining due to a rare blood cancer, and I didn't want to rock the boat and hurt them. But after showing them a frayed picture the investigators had sent me, my dad immediately pushed me to go to Colombia. He said, "Melissa, family is everything. You need to go." Okay, so we are just me. Oh, hey, Mac. Hi, buddy. My dogs are freaking out because they know we're leaving, and they don't like it at all. But it'll be a little easier this time because they're gonna be staying here because my mom is coming over. Look what I got. This is what I'm gonna wear to the airport. You gonna help? Come on, pick it up. No. All right, let's go. Come on. Oh, go. Ooh. I'm a strong, independent woman. Come on. Oh, there's a bag in your way. It's a paper bag. You know what's in the paper bag? More bags. I think they're shoes too, so. Ooh, scary shoes. All right, you may go. Go, up. Okay, quick update. I just took a shower, shaved, waxed, all that stuff. Now I just need to go fold some of the gently used clothes that I'm bringing for my nephew, of like nice jeans and shorts that my kids barely use because they grew so fast. Kind of cool though that I get to give hand-me-downs to my birth family, because all the like grandchildren that are born in this generation in my adoptive family are like all girls except for my boys. Like we have the only 2 boys on my mom's side of the family, so I just think that's just a funny how things happened like that. But yeah, so I'm finishing that up. I have the photo album, like most of the pictures are like that I chose are already ready. I just have to put everything together, and then I don't know, I think it's just meds, makeup. Okay, so please excuse the mess. But I wanted to show you guys some of the stuff that I got for my birth family. Okay, so first, my kids' favorite board book or picture book when they were little is called The Pout Pout Fish. And so I thought it would be really sweet if my nephew had the same one. So I got The Pout Pout Fish in Spanish so they can read it to him. It's called El Pez Pucheros, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. So I'm gonna have my mother-in-law read it with me later so I can learn how to pronounce all the words in there. But of course, this is my kid's favorite part. It goes blub, blub, blub. And it goes, deep in the water where the fish hang out lives a gloomy swimmer with an ever-present pout. He's a pout-pout fish with a pout-pout face, and he spreads a jeery release all over the place. Blub, blub, blub. And then said this one goes, en las aguas profundas, junto a otros compañeros, nada un pez que está triste, siempre haciendo pucheros. Yo soy un pez pucheros con cara de pesares. Voy rengando mis penas por todos los lugares. Blub, blub, blub. Probably destroyed that pronunciation, but that's from the first thing. Okay. Okay, well, I can't open it, but let me see. This is a little keychain. There we go. Then, this is kind of standard. I gotta take it out of the bag. Okay, and so the interesting thing about this is I got a few I Love New York shirts. Probably got them too big.
But I figure if anything's too big, it's easier to take it in than it is to take it out. So I got a few of those. I got like 3 of them in gray and 1 in white. But anyway, this is the shirt I got my nephew. Well, I didn't buy it new, but this is my kids. And my kids kept it in pristine condition because my eldest favorite was Spider-Man for a really long time. I also am gonna bring this guy. It's just like, I don't know if you guys ever played that game in gym class where everybody in the class goes around and there's like loops on each side and then you throw it in the air and then you climb underneath. Well, my kids are way too big for that now because this is a mini one. So they basically take up the entire tent in one step. This is the majority of the clothes that we are going to be donating. And I have to try to fit it in the suitcase. So let's see how that works out. Okay. This is what it's looking like right now. And like 95% of what's in here is for my birth family if they want it, or to donate it at the orphanage for the other moms and stuff. My mom just got here. I'm freaking out, man. It feels real. It feels real now that she's here. Go. I can't. But on a side note, you want to see something delicious? Okay, I already dug into it. So, I make quesadillas in the air fryer. You hear that crunch? Okay, I like to put some fiesta cheese, some tomatoes, and some tahini. Like, literally delicious. Comfort food. But yeah. Alright, I gotta go now.
Scared of his underwear? That's so sad. He's
They want to know how you feel about the trip.
Who's asking?
Everybody.
How I feel? I'm very proud that you're going. I am very happy that you're going to do this.
See?
Yeah.
Everyone's like so surprised.
Why? Why are they surprised? I'm your mother and I want your happiness. And if this is going to put your soul at ease, why not? I know you're my daughter. I know you love me. So, and I love you. And you gotta do what you gotta do.
No one's gonna replace you.
And no one will ever replace you in my heartbeat.
I know, you got the best daughter in the world.
Okay. I absolutely do.
Okay.
Be careful while you're driving over there. Driving.
Yeah, we're only gonna drive in the daytime, and then we're making
Be careful.
We're going to stay in Zetequira for like the first 6 nights, and then the last night in Bogota, so we don't have to travel as far there. Alright. Alright. I'll text you when we get to the airport, and when we leave. And
Try to enjoy yourself.
I'm gonna try. We'll see.
The first day, the initial meeting is going to be nerve-wracking. And then you're going to be fine.
I'm not a drinker, but I might need a few drinks to get through this week.
Yourself a glass of wine. Don't worry. Just lock everything on your way out. Yeah. All right?
Alright, love you.
Love you.
We began our trip by heading to New York City to pick up my mother-in-law.
desde afuera de la puerta porque no, you're not going to be able to go in, so you aim.
I love how he laughs because
At this point, it had hit around 1 a.m. and we all were a little bit sleep deprived. But the funniest thing was my in-laws teasing my husband because they knew he was going to be one of the tallest men in Zetequira, since it is a very, very small town. So all the bathrooms are very, very tiny. And even though he's only 5'10", 5'11", he would barely fit in the bathroom.
What? Favorite thing? It's like an autistic person's dream, not having to talk to strangers. For the week prior to the trip, I was freaking out about every step of going to the airport and checking in. So when I saw these self-check-in lines for the baggage, I was so excited as an autistic person to not have to interact with more people. We quickly checked in our 3 bags and then headed over to a convenience store in the airport, and we're scoping out some snacks. We ended up getting like an iced tea and a water. And we're just killing some time because it was an international flight. So we got there about 3 hours early so we wouldn't have to rush. The last time I had been to Colombia, I was 3 years old, and my parents were bringing us there to pick up my brother from the orphanage in Bogota. Okay, so quick update. We are checked in, made it past security. Charles did have a loss, though. What did you lose?
My belt.
Was it your favorite belt?
It was my only belt.
We are delirious because it's 3 o'clock in the morning. And I've slept like a collective 8 hours all week. Your mom keeps asking, like, why are your eyes like that? Because I have not slept. I hope the coffee is very strong.
It's Colombia,
My mother-in-law gifted me a few pesos while we were waiting, and they were the first Colombian dollars that I ever held.
Welcome to board. Do we need our passport again?
Okay, we made it safely on the plane. I was all the way in by the window. And at this point, I was very nervous, but more so about the actual flight because, like I said earlier, I don't travel a lot. And this was my second longest flight as an adult. I had flew all the way to California for an adoption conference back in April, and now here I was in November going to meet my birth mom and still kind of in denial about the whole thing. Because up until this point, it seemed like everything that could go wrong went wrong with my adoption. And then with my reunion, we were in the middle of a pandemic. And I just never thought I would actually see the day that I would be going to Colombia to meet my birth mom and my siblings. So at this point, I was in basically a state of shock as we went through the paces of getting our luggage and then getting our rental, which was supposed to be ready, but our plane landed a few minutes late. So they gave our car away and we had to wait an extra hour and a half, 2 hours for them to get us a new car to rent for the week. Luckily, this day was basically a travel day. We knew we were going to have to drive 5 hours to get to Zetequira. So our only real concern at the time was running out of daylight. But we were able to get our cash, exchange. We inspected the car, took a lot of pictures, just to make sure that we returned it in the same condition that we got it. And once we did that, we were on our way. Now, we were also a little bit nervous about driving in Bogota because everyone we had talked to up to that point said it was horrible, but it was very similar to driving in New York City, so it wasn't too bad. After a few hours, we stopped to get a bite of food, and as you can see, we could already see the difference in size in the buildings in America versus now getting closer to Zetequira. This was my first bite, and it was pretty delicious. It was basically steak, potato chips, and vegetables, and it was very good. We then grabbed a few Cokes for the road because we knew we'd be driving quite a bit further. And by this time, it was unfortunately getting a little darker because we planned to set out earlier, but then with the car issue, here we were. But luckily, our GPS on our phones worked the entire time, so we knew exactly where we were going, and the roads were in pretty good condition. The only thing that was a little scary was as we passed this town, this was the last real town for a very long time, and we ended up driving in the mountains in the middle of nowhere, and that was a little scary, but I knew to expect something like that because both my parents were immigrants from Italy and Portugal and had grown up in this type of like mountain isolated environment, so I wasn't too shocked, but I was just mostly nervous about getting lost. But this bridge was wild, and I definitely said a prayer or two here. Now, as you can hear, the sleep deprivation was definitely getting to me, but luckily we were practically at my mom's house by then. As soon as my husband put the car in park, I was out of that car and flying into my birth mom's arms. For the past few years, I worried about this first interaction and whether or not it would feel natural. And I'm happy to say that it was very, very normal to just go up and hug my mom. And that was refreshing in itself. But I do have to admit that the whole time I was hugging her, I was worrying about, what do I say? What do I say to my birth mom? What do I say that's not weird? And I ended up just saying, hola, ¿cómo estás? Because after the sleep deprivation, the nerves, the fear, the frustration of travel, that was all my brain offered me at that moment. But you know what? It was good enough. Since it was so late when we got there, we didn't spend a lot of time, but my mom made us coffee and we hung out for about an hour before we were just so exhausted that we had to head over to the hotel, which was just up the road, not even 2 minutes. One of the comforting things about the hotel is that it was this bright orange that we used to have in our kitchen. And we were in room 302, which coincidentally was the time that one of our kids was born. I met my birth mom last night. I know I've said this a lot, but it still doesn't feel real. It really doesn't. So it took us like forever to get here. And when we got to her house, she was standing there in front of her little house in like the grass area where cars park. And she just looked so small and nervous. And like, I think this is the first time in a while that I felt like the same type of urgency that I felt when my dad was sick. Like, this is your chance, don't waste it. So I kind of just ran up to her and hugged her. And I'm not even a hugger, so, but I'm just like, what do you say? The whole time I'm like, what do you say to your birth mom when you meet her? Like, what do you say to your mom when you meet her? So basically I just said, hola, ¿cómo estás? And I'm like hugging her, and like she started crying, not like hysterically, but you could see like the emotion, like the tears coming down, and just like the shock on her face too. Like, I knew, even though like
we can't communicate fully by ourselves yet because of the Spanish barrier. And especially like the exhaustion of the trip, like all the Spanish that I knew, it like dissolved, completely disappeared. I knew nothing other than like basic Spanish, like a 1-year-old would know, just say hola and cómo estás. So I didn't get to like talk a lot to her. It was more just like her introducing us to the rest of the family. So I got to meet my sister Paula. She was the first to get up. And then I think it was my brother Carlos, and he got up, and it seemed like he was a little nervous or just like didn't know how to act. So he was like smoking, and then he got a drink, and then he's like pacing back and forth. But then my brother Juan got up, and he was super affectionate with Paula, and it was sweet. And he was sitting there with us, and we're all just kind of like sitting around, and like thank God my mother-in-law Zoe was there, because she was like breaking the ice. She's super friendly, so she makes friends with everybody, so she's just talking and talking. I'm like, good, because I have no idea what to say. So that went well. But by the time we got back to the hotel, I felt okay. I was able to take a shower and get changed and get ready for bed. I put like a back patch on because my back was killing me, but all night I've been sick in the bathroom. I don't know if it's just like the stress of the trip making my IBD, my microscopic colitis, worse or what, but my body was done. Like I was up almost every hour on the hour. So we were supposed to meet Sandra for breakfast this morning, but I had to text her and be like, I'm barely functioning because I was up all night in the bathroom. And so we're going to meet a little bit later. My husband just went out to go hopefully find a Imodium. So sorry for the TMI. But the hotel staff is going to the pharmacy for us and picking it up, which is really, really nice. And then yeah, so I called my mom and my kids a little while ago. The phone was working really well in the beginning, but then randomly gave out. I got to find the Wi-Fi password here, but we just didn't have a chance when we first checked in. And so I got to see the boys and say hi. Killian was showing me his new toys, and Carlito was just talking to me and just saying hi. And that he liked his new toys and shirt that Nana got him. And I talked to my mom about how a little bit awkward it's been and like what to say, and she's just like reassuring me, just be yourself, it'll be okay, just take it slow, which is true. But it's like when you're sitting there like in the hot seat, because like literally this whole thing was like they don't really care much of it. Like they like my husband and mother-in-law, but their focus is on me naturally, which is really weird because I don't like to be in the spotlight. So this has definitely been a new experience, and just trying to get used to it. But yeah, so that's where I'm at. So once the medicine kicked in, we finally started to head over to Sandra's house. And this was the beautiful view from the hotel, just walking down to the other areas of it. And we took the ride down so we could go to town with Sandra and my nephew, so we can just spend the day together in a neutral place for our first full day together. And as you can see, it was a really beautiful day. I wasn't used to the warm weather because I'm coming from Pennsylvania in the United States. So we've been dealing with like freezing rain for the past few weeks. So it was really nice to be in like mid 70s, beautiful sun on our skin. And it just set the tone for the rest of the day, which was really lovely. We got to go to the church that Sandra and the family goes to every single Sunday, and it was gorgeous. It had these beautiful murals and tile, and it was like the center of the town. And after walking around a little bit, we stopped for some ice cream and coffee because hello, we're Colombian in Colombia.
And then I just had to get this shot of my husband by the ice cream stand because it had this little Irish leprechaun. And he has been stopping traffic since the second we got here with his red hair because they're not used to seeing Irish Colombians in Colombia. I then took the time to show Sandra the photo album that I had been working on for her with pictures from when my parents adopted me to my first birthday to when I was a little bit older as a toddler with my cousins and aunts and uncles to prom, to graduation, and just showing her things from my childhood that I knew she would want to see, what any mom would want to see. And although this was a very beautiful day, it was also very, very heavy. My birth mom took the opportunity to be very, very open and honest with me about her past and how me and my 2 elder sisters had come into this world. And it isn't an easy story for anyone to hear. But what killed me the most was the fact that Sandra thought she needed to ask for my forgiveness for the choices that she made. No woman in crisis should have to make once, let alone 3 times. But I'll touch on that a little bit more later. We ended the first night on a very nice note and got to meet her husband and the rest of the family. And we were invited to go on a hike early the next morning. And so we made sure to fuel up with coffee and a little bit of breakfast. Even though I still wasn't feeling my best, I tried to pick a little bit of fruit and was excited to see Gabe, my nephew, the next day, and that cute little smile. Since I have 2 boys that are 7 and 6, he definitely reminded me of them, and he looked just like my youngest son did around that age. But these are some pictures of the back of my mom's house. She really, really loves gardening and has plants everywhere, and it's just gorgeous. She also has a coop of chickens that lay eggs, which really reminded me of my childhood because my dad and my mom always had chickens and like ducks in our yard growing up. So it was nice to bond over that before the hike. So we had to cross this river to go on the hike to the thermal waterfalls, and the way that they kept us safe was that they would throw a rock in the river to see how high it got, so we would know whether or not it was safe to cross back afterwards, or we would need to take a different way. On the day that we went, there were dozens of families just hanging out. Some were cooking soup, some were just relaxing in the water, and it's said to have like healing properties, and it's just a really lovely place that my family visits quite often since it's pretty close to their house. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I was feeling pretty awful by this time, but I was struggling through it because it was just so gorgeous, and I didn't want to have to go home because I was dealing with health issues that I would have regardless because of my disabilities. So I just made sure to stay hydrated, and we took breaks as we went along. And I'm so happy that I managed to be able to go for the full hike because it honestly was one of the most beautiful things I have seen in my life. And it was by far one of my most favorite days of the trip.
Mira esta piedrita blanca. ¿Te gusta? Bótala. ¡Wow! ¡Wow! ¡Qué fuerza! Mira esta, mira esta, mira esta.
Qué bonita.
¿Sí? Este es para Carlitos.
¿La botamos?
No, este es para Carlitos.
Here we were keeping Gabi entertained with the little rocks while my brother Carlos and my husband helped my mother cross the river. And it was cute to see my husband earn some son-in-law points for the first time, and also to see just how much her family cares about her and takes care of her, because being adopted and not knowing much about her life until I was an adult, I always worried about her and wanted to make sure that she had people in her life to take care of her and that would love her. And so to see that firsthand, it was like a weight lifted off my shoulders. Now, it was also a really cool trip because it was the first time that I really got to start building these bonds with my brother as well. And growing up, me and my adopted brother, we loved each other, but we always struggled to build that bond. We didn't have a lot of similarities. So I was a little nervous about how I was going to be able to interact with my other siblings that I was actually biologically related to, and to see if there was a difference there. And it still takes work to build that, but there was something special about my brother helping me climb up these steep rocks and keeping me safe after just meeting me a day before, and to see how much he cared. After the hike, we grabbed a quick bite to eat at the hotel, and this is a picture with my other brother, Juan, and my mom. And unfortunately, I got really sick after the hike, so we spent the rest of the day kind of recovering. But the next day, we were able to get together again and went out to the closest town called Miraflores with my sister and my brother-in-law. And of course, I had to take advantage of this photo opportunity to get the whole family there. And then we got a quick bite to eat. And since my husband's a woodworker, I made him take a picture of this because I thought it was so cute and I want to have one too. Now, this is walking around Miraflores, and there were so many beautiful paintings on the sides of buildings. And since my mother-in-law, Zoe, owns an art gallery, we always have to stop and appreciate the art and just take it all in. And I'll tag that for you guys if you want to check it out. She sells authentic Colombian paintings by Colombian artists. She grew up in Cartagena, and she works now from the States, but she goes back every few months to run things over there as well. So this is a shameless plug for that. And I mean, just look at her. She is so fun, so loving, and I really appreciate that she came on this trip to help translate for me and my family, and it took a lot for her to do that. And so thank you again, Zoe. I will never forget this trip or these memories that we all made together. Now, another little fun tidbit, there was a group of kids in the last 2 trains of this car that my mother-in-law paid for, which was about $4 in US dollars, and they were screaming, "Viva Zoe! Viva Zoe!" And it was just an amazing end to another wonderful day, which unfortunately didn't end for me there.
I've been so sick. Thrown up so many times, and it's coming out the other end. Well, it was until today because I took so much Imodium. And oh my god, I'm literally laying on the bathroom floor right now.
Now, it would have been easy to edit those moments out of this video, but I think it's important to show that reunions aren't always easy. And when you're adopted and when you have different disabilities or health problems, traveling to your home country isn't always a easy experience. But thankfully, I have a very loving husband and mother-in-law who help take care of me. And even though my birth family didn't really understand what I was going through, they were very caring and respectful and helpful as well. So the next day, we stayed at the hotel and just took the opportunity to look at the grounds, the animals that they had on the little farm there. And there was a little kitten with heterochromia, as well as a bunch of chickens, goats, pigs, cows, and horses. And since I love animals and my husband is a veterinary technician, this was a really, really sweet moment where we got to see all these little critters that were there on the farm. And of course, we had to do a photo op with my husband with his red hair and the red cow. By this time in the trip, we had already gotten a reputation with the animals at the hotel. They had about 9 dogs that they kept and took care of there. And we had 2 that loved to sleep in our room with us. And this little beauty's name is Deborah, and she was such a sweetheart. As well as this gray pitty who really struggled on the steps but wanted to be with us, so she braved them every single day. Now, as you can see, I'm not the best vlogger. I'm not used to doing this. I typically make a lot of educational videos on adoption, on TikTok and Instagram. So usually it's me sitting in front of a camera ranting about some issue in adoption. Having the spotlight on me for this trip and trying to record content and videos felt silly at first, but the more I share my story and hear from other adoptees, the more I know how important it is for us to see representation of transracial adoptees, of late discovery adoptees, of international adoptees, going on these journeys to meeting our birth families without having other people sugarcoat our experiences to make them feel comfortable. Now, speaking of comfortable, today was one of the first days that I was able to keep enough food down that I felt like a functioning human. Which was good timing because today was Gabi's birthday and we had a lot to do. So the first thing on the agenda was picking up his cake from the bakery, and then we headed over to his school. And like any good aunt or tia, I helped blow up Spider-Man decorations and then chased after them when they flew away in the wind. But don't worry, we safely recovered them and brought them home for Gabi. Now, I'm not going to show pictures of the other kids because I want to keep their privacy, but this is from the party at their house after the school party later that night. My mama Sandra made a delicious soup.
What you eating?
¿Y en español cómo se dice?
Sopa.
Ajá.
Or caldo.
Ajá.
And I were just teasing my husband because we know he hates soup, but he ate it all, so we were so proud of him.
Ooh. Feliz cumpleaños a ti. Feliz cumpleaños a ti.
Nosotros todavía.
Feliz cumpleaños, Gabriel. Feliz cumpleaños a ti.
¡Sople! ¡Duro!
Se va a prender otra vez. Sí.
It was at this moment that I was really missing my kids and just wishing that they could be here to share all of these beautiful, magical moments with us. And I suppose that's just one of the struggles of being an international adoptee. Half of my family will always be halfway across the world from me. But luckily, thanks to technology, we can capture these moments and show the beauty of a family reuniting after years of loss. Even though my adoption was a secret, I always felt like pieces of me were missing, and I never understood why. But now I know that even though adoption gave me an adoptive family that loved me, it also ripped me away from one that loved me as well. So when I called up my mom, my adoptive mom, and my kids so they could talk to my birth family on this day, it was like all the pieces were finally sliding into place.
Show me your shirt, baby. See?
Now, for those of you who don't know, my parents were amazing at learning languages. So both of them knew Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, and my mom even spoke French pretty fluently. So while I was there, I wanted to make sure that both of my moms had an opportunity to talk to one another. And while I was anxious about this interaction for weeks in advance, I never expected them to start a fight over who was the more important mother. My mama Sandra kept saying that my mom, my adoptive mom, was the most important woman in my life and that she would always come second. And then my mom, Paula, she kept saying, no, you were her first mom. You will always have that place in her heart, and she can love us both. And for those of you who are familiar with my adoptive mom's and I's struggles over the years of trying to understand why she hid the secret of my adoption, know that part of it was from fear of worrying that I would leave one day and want to find my real mom and wouldn't want anything to do with her. So to have this full circle moment of healing and love between all of us meant the world to me. And I think once that stress and worry about how my mom would feel while I'm on this trip was appeased, my body finally stopped freaking out, and I was really able to enjoy the last leg of the trip. And for those of you who don't know, our shirts say querer es poder, which roughly translate to wanting is power, or the English phrase, where there's a will, there's a way. And I really connected with that because from the second I found out I was adopted, it seemed like I was on this journey. And I didn't know where it would take me, and I didn't know what I wanted. But as I took the time to learn more about my adoption story and the adoption industry as a whole, I finally found my purpose. Or simply making videos like this of my reunion with my birth mom and siblings to showcase the beauty and complexities of moments like this. Because too often, when it comes to adoption, we only hear the extremely positive or the extremely negative. But just like with this game, my husband and my family are playing, sometimes with adoption, you can hit the jackpot and have the most amazing experience, from birth parents to adopted parents to the adoptees. But sometimes you miss the board completely, and it doesn't end up so good. Which is why moments like these need to be commemorated and shared with the world. Because while this was one of the most wonderful nights of my life, it was also the most tragic, and having to say goodbye to my family. On our last morning there, we picked up my mom and Gabi for breakfast. And of course, Deborah was there to eat anything that we couldn't finish. And my sister, Paula, wrote me this cute little note and put it in the shape of a heart. And although I'm not going to share the contents of the note because that's private, she also made me a bracelet that said sister in Morse code in my favorite colors as a farewell gift. Saying goodbye to my siblings was devastating. Saying goodbye to Sandra was heartbreaking. When we were saying goodbye in the kitchen, she fainted. But luckily, I was standing right next to her and able to catch her head before she hit the ground. Unfortunately, the stress had messed with her sugar, and since she has diabetes, she ended up fainting. But we gave her a cup of juice and made sure that she was okay before we left. And in this moment, I had to be strong for her, even as the sounds of her cries echoed in my mind, while I worked to keep a smile on my face as we made our way
to the orphanage where I was placed for adoption. Now, it's important to note that I wasn't adopted from this exact facility of Fauna because this is the newer building that was built in 1995, and it's still currently under some renovations. And I'm not going to lie, it was really difficult for me to walk through this beautiful building with its stained glass, with its sculptures and wide open seating, and then think about the reason why so many children, like myself, were placed for adoption due to poverty and systemic issues, and then see the extravagance of the building used to separate families like mine was definitely a tough pill to swallow. And yet, I tried to keep an open mind. But the whole time I was walking through those halls with my husband and my mother-in-law and the lady leading the tour, and it broke my heart that just that morning, my mama Sandra was so overcome with grief and fear of never being able to see me, her daughter, again, where she was still struggling to stay on her feet after placing not one, but 3 children for adoption. And I know there's a lot of stigma with placing 1, let alone 3 children for adoption. But unless you truly understand how coercive and how unethical the adoption industry can be, you have no right to judge my mother or any pregnant person who has been in a situation where they were forced to make a choice like that. My mother was abandoned as a toddler on the streets of Colombia and was taken in by nuns. By the time that she was 14 years old, she was in an abusive relationship with a man who impregnated her twice. She was barely more than a child, and to this day she has scars all over her body from the abuse that she was subjected to. She did her best to raise my eldest brother and my oldest sister, but when she asked for help and asked for the father of her children to watch their daughter while she was at work, he had her arrested, and they were going to charge her with abandonment if she didn't take both kids and raise them by herself as she was struggling to put food on the table every night. That was when someone approached her about the orphanage and she placed my eldest sister. The cycle repeated itself with my next sister, and then a few years later, she was pregnant with me. Now, if you remember, my parents did lie to me about being adopted for 19 years. But when they did tell me the truth, they told me everything that was in my files and that the orphanage told them. And what they were told was that my birth mother was a young woman around the age of 16, and her family wasn't supportive. The father wasn't in the picture, and she simply wanted a better life for me. As you can see, this is a very, very simplified version of a story meant to make it easier for hopeful adopted parents to feel like they were doing the right thing, that they were saving a child who was unwanted. But the reality of this was much darker than the orphanage wanted my parents to know. They didn't want my mom and dad to know that the second that my mother gave birth to me and I was out of her womb, that I was taken away before she could hold me, before she could name me, before she could even get a good look at me. After carrying me in her body for 9 months, I was taken away and papers were shoved in front of her for her to sign her rights away. So as I walked around the orphanage trying to take everything in, it was hard to listen politely to the tour guide as I thought of how my parents were told that my birth mother would have several weeks to come back and hold me and make sure of her decision before the adoption was finalized. Now, this may be true in some cases, but what happened to my birth mother is not as uncommon as people may think. We are all taught that adoption gives children a better life, often ignoring the cost and loss of one family to make another. Like mine, and adoptees like me, who are adopted internationally, transracially, into another culture, are still struggling with our identities. Adoptees are 4 times more likely to unalive themselves than our non-adopted counterparts, to suffer from mental illnesses, and in order to make changes to help give adoptees like me the support we need to listen to all adoptee stories. Not all reunions with birth family go like mine, and I am extremely grateful for the openness in my birth family, that I was welcomed with open arms. But I want to reiterate that it wasn't always like that. And it took a lot of work to get here, but I am endlessly grateful that we didn't give up on one another. Because like my father always told me, family is everything. La familia es la todo. And I love my birth family, and I love my adoptive family. my in-laws, and the adoption community that have all supported me throughout this journey. Thank you, everyone.